Magandang araw! April Marcas po, ang inyong pretty ate sa Edtech Unit. Alam ba ninyo na may webinar o online training session ng Edtech Unit tuwing Sabado? Ang araw na ito ay nakalaan para sa ating mga mahal na kaguruan upang turuan sila ng mga bagong kaalaman at kakayahan sa paggamit ng makabagong software at applications para sa pinaka-epektibong paraan at lubos mapaghusay ang kanilang paraan ng pagtuturo. This is also a refresher session for our beloved teachers to enhance their skills in technology. Every Saturday, we will conduct webinar sessions for teachers about the use, advantages, and relevance of different blended learning software applications. Ang webinar seryeng ito ay magsisimula ng alas 9 ng umaga hanggang alas 12 ng tanghali para sa morning session. Magsisimula naman ng alauna at magtatapos ng alas 4 ng hapon ang afternoon session. You can watch us in our DepEd Educational Unit Facebook page, Educational Technology Unit YouTube channel, DepEd Tayo, and DepEd Philippines. Kita-kits tayo tuwing Sabado!
Magandang araw! Sir Wilbur po, at your service. Narito ang ETUlay upang gabayan ka sa inyong pag-aaral upang lubos na maunawaan ang iba't ibang paksa o subject. Ang ETUlay ay isang free online tutorial class na pinangungunahan ng ICT's Educational Technology Unit sa pamumuno ni Undersecretary Elaine Del P. Pascua. Ang programang ito ay hindi lamang para sa mga bata, kundi ito rin ay magsisilbing gabay sa mga magulang at mga guro kung paano nila ituturo o gagabayan sa bawat asignatura ang kanilang mga anak o mga estudyante. Sa kasalukuyan, ang self-learning module mula sa rehiyon ng Calabarzon at kilala sa tawag na Pivot ang ginagamit sa ating ETUlay online class. Kaya ano pang hinihintay ninyo? Ihanda na ang inyong mga ballpen o lapis, papel o kwaderno at samahan kaming itulay ang pagkatuto para sa bawat batang Pilipino. Sama-sama tayong magtutulungan para malampasan ang mga hamon sa panahong ito. Halina't matuto kasama ang inyong online tutor sa oras na ito.
Alright, good afternoon Philippines and welcome to our ETUlay online tutorial sessions for English for academic and professional purposes. Brought to us by the Department of Education through ICT's Educational Technology Unit. We will streaming live over YouTube and also to our Facebook channel in our social media platforms of the Department of Education. Once again, good afternoon to our senior high school students, most especially to our senior high school students at Abuyod National High School, spearheaded by our school principal, Dr. Connie A. Madrid, and also to our fellow teachers in senior high school. Sila po yung mga Magic 9 sa senior high school. And once again, welcome again to English for academic and professional purposes for Week 7. So, I will be your substitute teacher for this subject since Ma'am Nova is not yet around and has important matters in their school. So again, magandang hapon po muli. I am your tutor for this afternoon, Tutor Jessica Marie S. Borromeo from Abuyod National High School. Shout out to all the teachers in SDO Rizal Province and of course to our school Schools Division Superintendent, Ma'am Cherry Ludi Repia, and our ESDSS, Ma'am Bibilin Pambid and Ma'am Gloria C. Roque. Hello po. And of course, good afternoon to Miss Diding Galaura from Jusdada Jusdada F. Galaura is watching, and of course to Sir RJ Calaguas. And hello to all of my Anlichitas there who already passed their Microsoft Certified Educator yesterday. Congratulations, Sir Carl sa Hagun Tadeo, and of course to Abhil Poblete Megino. Congratulations, and I hope for the best for tomorrow. because we will have an examination in Microsoft Office Specialist. And for today's session, we are more tackling on our important lesson in designing questionnaires. So again, it is more important for us to get to know how to construct a simple and yet very quantifiable questions which is related to our researches. So I think more of the researchers need to craft this kind of questions because it has a professional purposes when it comes to action research. Let's say, for example, we have an action research in Matuto. So I hope Sir James Ryan M. Someone and Isa Cruz is also tuning with us right now. Okay? So let's now proceed. What are the principles or the basic principles in designing a question? Number one, we have write short and simple questions. It should be short, simple, and can easily answered by the respondents. Let's take a look at the examples. Even the current trend of more hits, more home runs, longer games in general, and more injuries in baseball today. Do you think that steroids should continue to be banned even though it is not enforced? So what have you noticed about the question? Aside from the long descriptions about steroids, it must be it cannot be fouled, rather, the construction of some questions. As you can have the descriptive analysis because it is already answered. So in formulating a statement or a question, it must be short and simple. And what can be the revision or what should be the better question rather than this? Because the main problem of these questions, it has a long questions that can be confusing. Very confusing for some of the respondents. We cannot easily adapt or we cannot easily analyze further what's the good and what's the bad side of the using of steroids. So take a look on how can we revise this question. So the better question here is, steroid use has both positive and negative effects on baseball. So it is more pertaining to a baseball player. Do you think that steroid use should be banned? So simple as that. It has to be a short and simple questions. It has also a very, very short description all about steroids. So, yun po yung pinupukol dyan sa question 1, which could be the decision for some of the respondents that we must answer a yes or no question. So, we must consider those constructive criticism of these questions, whether it is a subjective type or objective type of questions. Next, let us have another example or another principle. No leading or avoid leading questions. What should be leading question is all about? Questions which subtly prompt the respondent to answer in a particular way. For example, you hate the President of the United States? Why is it leading? Do you think that we have to force ourselves to answer a yes or no question even we don't know who's the President of the United States? Simple as that. We need to avoid those questions which have a forcefully prompt for us to decide whether it is a reliable question or not. But we need to think of the questions which are opinionated. You have to avoid that kind of questions which includes an opinionated word. What should be the opinionated word there? It is hate. Do you hate? O, bakit ayaw mo ba talaga yung presidente ng Amerika? Ganon ang mga senaryo. Because most of the questions must be unbiased. Okay? Most of the questions must be unbiased, and it should be we'll analyze ourselves which one is which one is better, which one is not. So how do we paraphrase that questions? So let's find out another one. Who do you think of when you heard 9/11? What is 9/11? It must be an attack or the twin attack of the Al-Qaeda network, if I am not mistaken. So it is more on relative to current events. So who do you think of when you hear 9/11 attack? So Osama bin Laden, Saddam Hussein, and George W. Bush. So let's take a look at the choices. Why do we need to put these names on the choices? Because we think that this group of people or certain group of people are also involved on the 9/11 attack. So we must avoid the misleading or leading questions that we think we don't know which is the certain answer for that. Whether all of the answers are also the same, it's because we also, or it also forces the respondents to answer or to choose one of these people, even if none of them come in their mind. So, kailangan may masusing research po dun sa mga tao na kasangkot dito sa mga ganitong mangyayari. So, we must think first, or we must think further. We do not force ourselves to choose at least one. At less or unless we have to know every detail of this person. Let's say George W. Bush. Or George W. Bush is the former president of the United States. Saddam Hussein is also a former president of Iraq rather. And Osama bin Laden is also an icon when it comes to terrorist attacks. So something like that. So we must avoid that certain questions. Next one, ask close-ended questions. That is the third principle. Close it up. So this is much simpler than the first one. Why do you play sports? So it is already explained, for enjoyment, of course, for health, and for friends. And also, good afternoon to Ma'am Banjing Aparado. Ayan. Good afternoon, ma'am. And we must think of a close-ended question which is much related to the word sports, or what should be the effects or the good effects on playing sports, whether it is basketball or volleyball. What do you think is the main objective of a close-ended question, which is good benefit for that, or it should be a bad effect for some of those people who have a sensibility on the skin? Should I say they have a other sickness, just like the asthma, which is the most common sickness for those certain people na hindi po gaano nakakahinga ng maluwag, ganun. Okay. So next one, non-threatening. So we have already used or avoid the misleading or leading questions. Make sure that the questions is simple and short. And we should avoid the threatening questions. Because questions must not be non-threatening or non-sensitive to evoke the truth. In general, would you say you drink more than your friends, less than your friends, or about the same amount as your friends? Which is the question? Because you have already threatened that person on how to drink a 1 glass of alcohol or 1 bottle of alcohol per day. So, in general, kung sinabi natin in general, hindi natin nilalahat. Kasi hindi naman lahat ng mga kaibigan mo ay drinkers. And did you know that most of them has a sensitivity when it comes to thinking the ideal way on how to enumerate themselves, how to they decide whether to drink or not to drink. So that is the basic principle. It should be not threatening. And such, we have also to avoid condensation. On condensation, or meaning use a simple language which not talking down and be simple without being condescending or if I would search in the dictionary, it has something to do with the same or the same process. Yan, the same process of analyzing of a credits or a particular occupation. Should the Surgeon General, for example, the head person in charge of health promotion, ban cigarette smoking? What is wrong with that question? Because the Surgeon General, which is the head person in charge of the health promotion, you have already elaborated the identity of that person or the Surgeon General, that we have to consider his identity and we do not toil down those terms or terms of we have to specify their possession. Okay, so we should avoid this, but we have to subtract those or to eliminate those what do you call this? Their occupations. It must be lessened. So we will turn back also to the first principle, which is simple and short. Baga sa pag-aanalisa ng mga tao, hindi na po natin yan i-include yung mga ganitong labels or yung mga title or yung mga entitlements. Kasi hindi naman yan importante kung siya ay anak ng presidente man yan or kung anak ng senador man yan, hindi po yan important. The main important there is his stand on the certain issue. That's like smoking ban or cigarette smoking ban. Just like that. Number 6, it is much important to remember, avoid vague or ambiguous wording. Questions should mean the same thing to all respondents. All the terms should be understandable. Take note of that. We should take their level of understanding, so we must avoid ambiguous words or with vague or vagueness of the certain questions which cannot be reached into the limit of their knowledge. But we must say that English is not a type of language that measures their knowledge. So all in all, we have the terms. We must be careful with the terms that we can use to formulate the defined time periods and specific complex questions in multiple stages. So alam na yan ng mga critic ko nung ako'y critic reader ng kanilang mga action research or yung mga research study. Alam niyo yun ng mga senior high school students dyan. So, we have to contextualize the question which is have a lesser ambiguous words. Hindi po kailangan ng medyo mahabang mga terms, but we must think of the defined time periods, which is more relevant nowadays. So here are some of the examples. How often do you feel tired during the day? To what day are you referring? And what time? What is wrong with that question? Yung ginamit pa lang yung word na often. Saan ba dapat siya nakalagay? Sa first one, sa second one, or it can be drastic, changing because of the person you are referring and in the time frame. You must consider that question or construction of questions. Okay? Or this respondent is thinking of a work day. For example, it's a work day today. It's Monday or Tuesday rather. They should choose the time frame which convenient or which is convenient to them. It's either vacation man yan or to something that weird to calculate or to try too much or to choose or to think of what should be a preferred day for them to feel tired. Hindi po natin yan alam. Kumbaga, everyday talaga, mga pagod na tayong lahat. Ano? So, ganito ang magiging question. How often do you watch TV? Instead of, do you watch television regularly? Why is it vague? Because of the word regularly. So, looking back at the previous question, how do we paraphrase this certain question? How often do you feel tired during the prayer or during the day? Or do you feel tired within the day? Or something like that. So, it must be simple, but it can be pertain to a certain day. On how often do they watch television? Because most of the students, most of our learners are intent to use internet as a tool for communication rather than television. So, something like that. So, we are now done with the number 6 principle. The 7th one is the double-barreled questions. Ask one question at a time and avoid assumption of imposing unwarranted questions or 2 or more questions are considered as double-barreled. So, hindi po kailangan dala-dalawa agad ang question. Kumbaga, ang tanong doon, halimbawa, kayo na ba ulit? Kailan pa? Parang ganun yung mga ganong question. But in the research case, we must avoid those questions. Remember this ha, we have to ask a question one at a time. Okay? One at a time lang. Hindi po kailangan sali-saliwa ang mga questions. Example of a double-barrel question. With the way the war is going, do you think it's a good idea to send more troops? Is it a good question or a bad question? I think it is a double-barrel question. Or should I say, this is one of the double-barrel because, ayan, ano na, It imposes assumptions. Ayan, nag-a-assume ka kasi na kung halimbawa, nagkita lang kami kahapon, tapos tinanong ka na agad kung naging kayo na ba ulit. Parang ganun yung status ng inyong puso, parang ganun lang. You have to avoid this question, but in a sense, it asks the people to accept the premises that the war is going badly before they respond regarding the troops. So you have already know the status of their condition when it comes to war. So you don't have to be assumed with that questions. You have to avoid that impose assumption to that question. Wala ka pa sa purpose of the study, wala ka pa sa statement of the problem, nag-assume ka na agad. So, yun ang kailangan nating iwasan, ano. And, another one, are the Cubs and Braves good baseball teams? So, what is wrong with that question? Are the Cubs and Braves good baseball teams? So, parang tingin mo, dalawa na silang the best. Wala ka ng ibang choice eh. Kumbaga, nagpapili ka na, tapos, tatanong pa kung sino pa yung mas better. Parang ganun lang. So, kailangan iwasan po natin mga ganitong questions. It's simply because it is an example of a double-barrel questions. The problem here is asking the two separate things. Perhaps the Cubs are bad and the Braves are good. Why do you think that these two certain teams are good baseball teams? Kumbaga, kailangan pa ba silang i-compare? Nevertheless, yung isa dyan ay mas madaming number of wins kaysa dun sa isang team. So, bakit kailangan natin siyang i-double barreled or i-assume yung mga ganitong questions na very confusing. So, we must avoid that questions na alam na po natin yung assurance. Huwag po tayo mag-a-assume kung hindi naman talaga kayo. Ouch. Okay? Next one. Ayan. Are the Cubs a good basketball team? Why is it, we think that this one is a better question? It is, simply because Cubs is a type of basketball team. Ayan. So, kailangan po, isang question lang po, Kung kailangan ng isang question, ayan, yung isang question ng basketball team. Are the Cubs are good basketball team? Okay? So, kailangan po, we have to ask one question at a time. Isang beses lang po, And, another example there, you have to define scales. Okay? The scales are, response scales are quickly define the dimension or continuum. Respondents are to use in the reading task. So, what are those examples of the scales? Example, make them logical and meaningful. Not many, not some, not few, or none. It must be a bipolar or unipolar scale. Okay, so let's look back at the definition of these scales. Not many, not some, not few, not none, but we must do the bipolar or unipolar scale. Ano nga ba itong mga scale na ito? Bakit nga ba siya ginagamit pagka nagre-research? Okay, so let's look at the bipolar. The bipolar measure both direction and intensity of an attitude. Yan. Hello there to Mark Platon. Good afternoon. So, this one is a bipolar scale or a level of an attitude. Kung kayo ba ay magaling attitude kung yan ay positive or very negative effect. That is how you can define questions based on their attitudes. Another one is the unipolar scale, or the one concept with varying degrees of intensity. What should be the effect? It has to be a moderate, no effect, small effect, or very large effect. That is the level of attitude of a person pertaining to the impact of his or her personality. So we think of those terminologies on the defining scales, or the capacity on how to deal with those questions. And we have to minimize the presumptions or presuppositions. Answering a question that implies accepting its presuppositions. Yan, very tongue-twisted yung ganitong term. Presuppositions. A respondent may be led to provide an answer even if its presuppositions are false. So, meron pa siyang, kumbaga, meron tayong mga assumption of the study. Is there any significance between the positive and negative change in the new normal setup? So, we have the assumption there. There is implications that accepting its presuppositions, whether it is true or false. But, nevertheless, some of the questions there has a false statements. Okay? So, this one is the example. Are you a Republican or a Democrat? Again, are you a Republican or a Democrat? What are those choices? These are the two people, or the two group of people within the parties, or the group parties, or the political parties in the United States. Those are the names of the groups. The Republicans and the Democrats. So, which one suits you most? The Republicans or the Democrats? It's up to you. Kung halimbawa na lang kung ikaw ba ay ka-DDS ba, or kung ikaw ay mga dilawan, mga ganitong mga constructive criticism dun sa most of the learners or those of the critics in politics. Yan yung mga ganitong klaseng arguments that we must be facing. Okay? So, with that, the problem there is the presupposes that one of the alternatives is true. Which one is true, which one is false. So, we need to minimize that presupposition. So, yan pala yung ibig sabihin nun, the one who presupposes that one is good and one is bad. So, we need to avoid those certain principle or sa questions na very exaggerated. Alam niyo naman yung suppositions ninyo o yung mga position ninyo sa buhay. Ganyan. Okay? So, we have another question. What are your usual hours of work? Which of the pertaining question is the problem, actually? What are your usual hours of work? Do you think that this one has its own presuppositions or presupposes the workers in the field, or whether kung yan ay inbound or outbound man yan? Let's see. No, or does respondents have the usual hours of work? Ayan, that's the problem. Kasi hindi naman lahat ng tatanong mo ay may work or stable job. Most of them has a irregular or mga contractual na tinatawag, at meron din mga provisional o yung mga tinatawag natin na on probation process pa lang yung kanilang application for regularization. So, kailangan po i-limit din natin yung kanilang stand or ng kanilang status of work. and it can be rewarded to ask, what are your usual hours of work, or you do not have usual hours. So something like that, because we have a lesson presuppositions of the status of those workers. Kahit sila man ay contractual or kahit sila ay regular. Ganun. Kailangan po ang mga ganitong presumptions. And lastly, we have first-hand experience. Questions should ask for first-hand experiences. If accuracy is the objective, beware of asking for second-hand knowledge. Hypothetical questions, ayan ang pinakang ayaw na ayaw kong ipasagot, mga hypothetical statements. Solutions, or asking about solutions to complex problems. It is a no for me. Pagka ganitong mga questions na ipapasagot, halimbawa na lang sa research, pag meron pang mga second-hand knowledge, yung mga complicated lang yung mga descriptions, hindi niya masasagot. You have to lessen that questions or certain type of questions. But with this, we have an example there. How likely are you use anesthesia when delivering your baby? Sino ba yung mga nag-a-anesthesia dyan pagka nanganganak? Gusto nyo ba yung normal na delivery? Nag-a-anesthesia pa ba yung iba sa atin? Alam ba yung pakiramdam na ina-anesthesia? Kumbaga, abot hanggang litid talaga yung sakit. Yan. So, kailangan din i-limit din natin yung mga first-hand experience. Kasi kung hindi naman talaga experience yung pagtatanungan mo, syempre, hindi siya applicable. Because the main problem there is much hypothetical. Women who have delivered the baby are better at estimating their probability of using anesthesia rather than the women who haven't delivered a baby. Ganun lang po, ano. So, yung first-hand experience, we must limit that certain of questions. We must avoid that types of questions. Limit ourselves with the experiences. Kung baga, halimbawa, sino ba sa inyo yung mga iniwan na kanilang asawa, pagpalit sa pera, parang ganun yan. Hindi naman experience yung magmamatter dyan sa statement. Nung baga, naalala ko, nung ako'y nag-critic about faith nung senior high school, ayan, so kailangan din yung tinanong sa akin na bakit ba itetest yung faith? Alam naman ng iba na meron talagang faith. Hindi nga lang nagsisimba, pero alam nila sa sarili nila na napaka-faithful nila. Parang ganun lang yung ine-express or pinopropound ng chairman. Hindi ko na po babanggitin kung sino siya. Alam ko nanonood siya ngayon. Okay. So, what types of questions should I write? What are those questions? Here are some of the questions. Open-ended questions. It is best used for breaking the ice. Breaking the ice, hindi yung bibiyakin talaga yung ulo natin, literal. But, when the respondent's own words are important, when the surveyor doesn't know the possible answers, we should use the open-ended questions or breaking the ice of an interview. Example. Next, the close-ended questions or collecting rank or order data. So, yung open questions is usually used during the qualitative type of research. The close-ended questions usually used in a statistical results of a quantitative research. Yan, quantifiable response choices are known at meron din siyang desired questions or aims na kailangan din masagot. Then, another one, the Likert scale. Yan, tinype na ni Marta Todd. To assess about a person's feeling about something. Yan, yung mga Likert scale ay dalasan yung mga 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Kung may strongly agree, may moderately agree, may moderately disagree, mga ganong mga level. That is what you call the Likert scale. Multiple choice. Ayan, medyo minimum, alam na din natin tong choices na to. They have a finite number of options. It's either 1, 2, or no, sorry. It's 2, 3, or more options. Buti pa sila, madaming options. Ganyan. Ordinal. To rate things in relation to other things. Let's say, for example, in a scale of 1 to 10, how will you rate yourself in the new normal class? How will you rate yourself from 1 to 10? Parang ganito yung ordinal. Or that questions that testing your relation to other things or your capabilities. Next, categorical, or the answers are categorized and each respondent must fall on exactly one of them. You must know what are the demographic features of those certain people. Hindi niya categorize o pinubukod po sila. Kung halimbawa, isang bata ay frustrated, yan, pagsasamahan niyo sila. Yung isa naman ay instructional reader. So, kailangan niyo din i-specify yung kanilang categories. Okay? Numerical. For real numbers like age, number of months, etc., etc. Ito ay madalas natin nakikita sa profile. Yan, sa mga profile of learners. Ganyan yung mga age nila, yung gender, number of months, number of years, yung mga tinatanong doon. And, it's review time. What should be considered when a formalized set of questions designed to obtain information from the respondents or the subjects selected for a study? Ayan, it is much basic for those of you who have already guessed what word that pertains to that description. Of course, the answer for this is questionnaire. It's a formalized set of questions. It is already designed to obtain the information from the respondents in a particular study or a research. Hindi po yan mawawala sa isang research, yung questionnaire. Open-ended questions is best used when the surveyor does not know all the possible answers. Is it true or false? Again, is it the open-ended questions are best used when the surveyor does not know all the possible answers? The answer for that question is, of course, true. Ayan, true yung kanyang answer. Write short and complex questions. Yan po yung kanyang explanation. Avoid leading questions. Is it true or false? How can we explain this question? Avoid leading questions. Is it true or false? Of course, the exact answer there is true. We should avoid leading question. Kaya nga, non-leading question. Kasi avoid din natin yung kanilang identity. Kasi kung alam na nila yung sagot, malamang hindi na sila mamimili ng anong mga sagot. Okay? Next, ask close-ended questions. Is it true or false? Of course, when we ask the close-ended questions in a level of quantifying numbers or quantifying the status or the statistics in the quantitative research, of course, definitely it is true rather. Okay. And the last one, questions must be threatening. Yan natin kung talagang threatening ba ang questions. Of course, it's false. Questions must not be threatening. Okay? And that's it for our EAPP or English for Academic Purposes or Professional Purposes. So, thank you for watching with us and Up next, we have our tutor for reading and writing. Of course, my very good friend of mine, tutor Jeslet Shido. Coming right up next after this. And thank you for watching ETUlay online tutorial sessions, and see you tomorrow for Filipino 7, 1:40 to 2:20 in the afternoon. And of course, this has been your tutor for EAPP on behalf of Tutor Nova, Tutor Jessica Borromeo, now giving you a good reminder that asking questions is better than we knowing, or we don't know what is the real answer. So thank you so much, and God bless us all. This has been your ETUlay online tutorial sessions, and stay tuned for the next tutor for this hour. Thank you. God bless.
Sigurado ako na marami ka na namang natutuhan sa ating ETUlay tutorial session ngayong araw. Tandaan, ito ay hindi lamang para sa ating mga mag-aaral, kundi pati rin sa ating mga minamahal na guro at mga magulang na kaagapay natin para maituloy ang pagkatuto sa kabila ng nararanasang pandemya. Patuloy ding sumubaybay sa DepEd TV para sa mga araling ginawang video episodes. Mapapanood ito mula Lunes hanggang Sabado, alas 7 ng umaga hanggang alas 7 ng gabi sa inyong mga telebisyon. Abangan bukas mula 1:00 ng tanghali ang iba pang aralin sa ating ETUlay free online tutorial session sa Filipino. I-like and subscribe at manatiling nakasubaybay sa ating ETUlay tutorial session sa DepEd Edtech Unit FB page at Educational Technology Unit channel sa YouTube at sa DepEd Tayo at DepEd Philippines social media accounts. Paalam!
Thank you so much. Thank you.